This week we're going to go ahead and create a 3D space shooter style game. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. Save it wherever it is that you want to save your projects. I'm going to go ahead and just call mine Space Shooter 3D. I'm going to make sure 3D is selected. I'm not going to add any asset packages. And I don't need analytics enabled for this. So let's go ahead, we'll hit create, and let's start creating our project. So for today's lesson, all we're going to do is go ahead and create a ship and just get it to start moving forward. Now I've noticed in the other games, a lot of people spend a lot of time at the beginning going ahead and trying to find those like really cool looking assets or sound effects or stuff like that when they're just starting their game. And it's such a waste of time because at the end of the game, your opinions are probably going to change on what the look and feel for a game are. So I'm going to go ahead and just completely skip all the importing of assets then. We're just going to work with the primitives that come in Unity. Then at the end, the very last stage, we'll go ahead and actually go out and find models and sound effects and everything else that we need and add them then. So with that said, let's go ahead and make a ship. So I'm just going to start off. I'm just going to use a cube. I'll make sure it's at 0, 0, 0. Everything's default. And on the Z, I'm just going to make it, let's make it 3, maybe 2. Yeah, let's do 2. I want to keep it fairly small. Now we'll go ahead, we'll do 3. We can always rescale things later. And I'm actually just going to use this for the body of my ship. And I'll just call it body. I'm going to want another one. And this is just going to be for like, kind of like wing things at the back, the crossbar. So on X, I'll make that 3. On Y, I'm going to make it a bit thinner, maybe 0.5. And on Z, 0.25. I'll move it back. Yeah, it's kind of like 3D modeling inside of Unity. All right, and then I'm just going to put some sort of like little wings or something like that on the end there. So let's call this wing crossbar. Now, obviously, none of these are meant to be used as the final assets, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead, create another cube. I'm going to move it over here a bit. And to be honest, I want it quite a bit like the cube, just a bit smaller and shorter. So on C, I'm going to go 2. Y, let's do 3/4 of it, 7.5. And on X, I want quite a bit thinner here. So let's do 0.5. And Z was actually supposed to be 0.5. Now remember, these scales are ratios in comparison to what we start off with. So 0.5 for this cube down here, because it's a child of the body, which is 3, is actually 1.5. So if we were to go ahead and unparent this, we see how it jumps to 1.5. And of course, as we parent or child it again, it jumps to 0.5. If you're having trouble with that, just go ahead and build everything unparented and then just put it together afterwards. So I do want it a bit bigger than that. So 0.75. I'm actually going to move it back a bit, right about there. Looks good to me. And I'm just going to call this left wing. I know it's not really a wing, but that's what I'm going to call it. And I want to put one exactly on the right side. And this is along the X axis. If you notice the red line here. So what I'm going to do is just come in and on position for X, make it negative. There we go. Now I just realized I did something wrong here. Can anyone spot what it is? I did not make my ship facing forward on the Z. So this is the direction it's going to fly in. But that's okay. We could just easily move everything down and flip it around and everything else. But this is actually a good example. Actually, let's rename this first. Sometimes the models you get either from your artist or from the asset store do not face in the right direction. And we want to be able to have everything face in the Z to begin with. So what I'm going to do is actually close it all down, create a new one. And it's going to be an empty. And I'm just going to call this player ship. And I'm going to have that be the parent for the body. And I'll just drag the body onto it. And then with the body underneath it, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees on the Y. And we notice it's still pointing backwards here. But if we go ahead and click the ship, this is what we're going to add our movement script to. Now it actually points forward for us. Now, one of the cool things about having it all be separate cubes like this is that when it blows up, we can have it literally blow up and have pieces fly everywhere. I'd still rather handle that in a 3D modeling program, but this is good enough for now. So let's go ahead and make our player movement script. So I'm going to come down here. We're going to need a few folders. I might as well make the prefabs one while I'm here. And the scripts. Inside of scripts, no, I did not want to make a folder called scripts. I wanted to make a prefab called scripts. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. Yep, I do not need a script called scripts. All right, so we'll go ahead, we'll create a folder this time called scripts. And inside that scripts folder, we'll go ahead and create one for player movement. Sounds good. PM. We'll just double click that, open it up inside of MonoDevelop or whatever IDE you've chosen to use. It's a little bigger for us. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead, like always, I just like to get rid of this stuff. All right. So we want a player to be able to move. Today, I just want to focus on just having it move forward and backwards smoothly. And we know we've done this before through transform. So I'm going to go into the update. And we could do something like transform plus equals to transform.forward. Now what this does is it takes whatever our current transform is at, and it moves it 1 unit forward on that Z. Remember, Z is always forward and backwards. X is left and right. Y is up and down. And then multiply it by some value. Let's say, I don't know, 10 for now. Go ahead, save that off, jump back inside of Unity. We have an error here. And I see the problem here. We want to get the actual, not just the transform, which remember is referencing this here. We actually want to get the transform position. So we have to do a dot position. We'll go ahead and save that off, jump back in. And if we hit start, sure, it's going to move. If we go ahead and actually attach the script, no laughing now. How many times have you guys done that? So we'll go ahead, we'll hit start, boom, it's gone. And of course, if we watch the units over here, it's actually moving 10 units every frame. So let's go ahead, we'll jump back into the code. And that's exactly what we're telling it to do. We're telling it to move 1 unit multiplied by some number. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of this number. I'm going to come up here, do a serialized field. We're going to convert this to a float, and I'm just going to call it movement speed. Yeah, movement speed's good. And I'm going to start that off with probably something bigger, 100. Then I can come down here and go ahead and actually just use that movement speed. That way I can change it in the inspector. Now, remember, anything that we have moving during the update, there is something special we had to do. Does anyone remember that? Well, if you said multiply it by time.delta time, you were right. So I'm going to go ahead, save that off, come back into Unity, hit play. And we notice it's not moving 100 units at a time. It's still moving pretty fast. If we were to go ahead and select it and hit double F, we don't really get a relationship to how fast it's moving because there's nothing around. But we see that it is moving. Now there's one more modifier we want to add to this because we only want it to move forward when the player presses that forward button. And this is where we're actually going to get into the input system. So jump back into Unity. We've looked at the input system in other projects. So it's not completely new. I just want to do a quick reiteration for those who don't remember everything. So to get to it, I went down to Edit, Project Settings, Input, and then you get the inspector over here for it. Go ahead, open it up. Here's all the ones that are defined. If you want to go ahead and make another one, if there's one specifically you want, you can right-click, duplicate. If there's one that you really don't want there, you can delete it. You can come up here and just increase the number. This will actually go ahead and add another one down at the bottom, which is a duplicate of the last one. Likewise, if you reduce the number, it just takes away from the bottom itself. But what I want to look at right now is the one for horizontal, for vertical. This is the one we're actually going to use to move forward and backwards. Now we'll come back and look at all these values in the next video, or within the next couple of videos, probably the next video. But I do want to stress out that the name is what we want, and we want to make sure that we spell it correctly. So I'm going to go ahead, copy that, we'll save it, and come inside, and we're going to add something else here besides time.delta time. And since this is all multiplication, it really doesn't matter what order you do it in. But I'm going to grab the input.getaxis, and there's two different types we can get here. There's getaxis and getaxis raw. I want the getaxis. The getaxis has these values applied to it, the gravity and the sensitivity. Basically, it ramps up a little bit, and when you first press the key down, it ramps down. I want that effect. The getaxis raw is really just getting the axis. In the case that we're using the keyboard here, it's either 0 or 1. Again, more of this on the input system when we get a little bit further in. But for this, make sure you're picking getaxis. Then, of course, in quotes, make sure you spell the name right. I actually copy paste, make sure I didn't get it wrong. And that is it. So we're going to go ahead and say, move us forward 1 unit multiplied by whatever movement speed we have set, plus the time.delta time, and the value the player is inputting through the vertical axis. Now, one thing to note in case you forget, when we go ahead and use this input system that's built into Unity, the values you can get range from -1 to +1. It's never greater or lesser, which is great because we know that at 1, we're moving full speed. So let's go ahead and we'll save that off. We'll jump back inside of Unity. We'll go ahead, hit play. And now it's just going to sit there. But when we go ahead and hit that forward key, it starts to move. Now, if we hit the backwards key, it moves backwards too. And 100 does seem a little fast, doesn't it? Let's go ahead. We'll actually shrink this down a bit as far as the speed goes. So I'm going to select my player ship. And I don't know, 50. Let's do half of what it was before. Now, the speed is really just dependent on what you want for your game, the feel and look. I'm just going to stick to 50 for now. But there's a couple other things I want to do in my code just to get things set up for future videos. The first thing is this transform. Since we're going to be doing quite a bit with it during the update, even though Unity 5 has added a lot of optimizations, I still like to go ahead and cache my transform and just use that local copy. So instead of always going out to my transform, grabbing its position, doing something to it, saving it back, I want to grab a local copy and just work with that. So I'm going to call transform, and I'm just going to call it my t, short for my transform. In the awake, go ahead and say my t is equal to transform. Now, instead of saying transform down here, we can just say my t. Same thing here, my t. And there's a few other things I'm going to want to do later on with this. Maybe play some sound effects as we accelerate, have some sort of particle effect or something like that. And because of that, I don't want to have my update being really huge. So I'm going to create a new method, and I'm just going to call it thrust. So thrusting forward. And I'll move that code down there. And of course, that means we have to call it through update. And there's one more thing I want to take care of. I don't want my ship to be able to fly backwards. Maybe you do, in which case you don't need this next line of code, but I know I do not want to. So what I'm going to say is if input.getaxis, then of course I got to get key, I want getAxis. And the axis I want is the vertical axis. Nope. Let's go ahead, copy paste. Oh, we'll just type it out. And we're going to say if it's greater than 0. So I'm pushing forward. I'm hitting that W key. Go ahead and move us forward there. And let's save this off, and provided we have no errors, this should be a good spot to end this video. So we'll go ahead, and there we go. Now I cannot move backwards. And of course, remember like before, we hit the double F, focus follow. And there we go, it's moving. Of course, you can't really see it moving because you have no reference for it, but you can actually see the numbers on the Z-axis moving. Great. So we got to move it forward. In the next video, let's go ahead and add rotations to it so we can actually have our ship turn. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Whoops, let's actually make sure we save our scene as well. But everyone should know about that by now, right? And I'm just going to call mine game. There we go. Now I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. So if you liked the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. It really does help me out here on YouTube. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter. You're a pretty chatty guy over there when I'm not walking through a forest or being stalked by eagles and falcons, lions, tigers, and bears.